Welcome into another episode of the 1977, a podcast named in honor of your 1977 NBA champion, Portland Trail Blazers. I'm your host, Chris Burkhardt. You can follow me over on X at Chris J. Burkhardt. Of course, you can tune in to Rip City Radio 620 before and after every Blazers game for game day and the fifth quarter to listen to me as well. And if you have been listening to those shows after the last few games, there's only been one topic, and that has been the Blazers centers, right? Mainly Donovan Clingan, because he was absolutely phenomenal in that second game of the back-to-back against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But you can't talk about the Blazers centers without talking about Robert Williams either, who was absolutely phenomenal. And that's what we'll start in this one. So my question is, do the Blazers have a center problem? Because in the first game against Minnesota, DeAndre Ayton didn't play. He's dealing with a finger injury. So Robert Williams comes in. And by the end of the game, you're like, okay, Robert Williams might very well be the best center on this Blazers roster. Like the way he played, he dominated. He was the energy off the bench. The Timberwolves couldn't stop him. Like, he very well might be the best center on the roster. And then the very next night, Donovan Clingan goes out and he starts in place of DeAndre Ayton again, and he goes crazy. He goes absolutely crazy. Now, in this one, there was no Robert Williams because Robert Williams wasn't going to play the second night of the back-to-back, right, as he continues to come back from injury. So Donovan Clingan comes in and just absolutely dominates. Has one of the best games from a Trailblazer center we've seen in a very long time. And you leave Mo to center going, well, maybe he's the Blazers' best center, right? All the while, DeAndre Ayton sitting on the sideline being an absolute great cheerleader. He's cheering the team on, and he knows what's going on. But you got two nights in a row, the last two Blazer games, where someone not named DeAndre Ayton looked like the best center on the roster. And so now you got to really think how this thing continues to grow and evolve, right? Now, we know, as we've talked about many times, that this is not the final iteration of the Blazers. This team is going to continue to change. It's going to continue to build. It's going to continue to move some pieces around as they build around the youth, right? There is a reason that when they debuted these new glasses, right, the drinkware, akin to the old Dairy Queen cups, right, the pint glasses, that it wasn't Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, and Anthony Simons on those glasses. It was Scoot Shea and Donovan Clingan, right? The Blazers want you to know that this is the future of this team. So they're going to continue to move pieces around. You don't know when or how, but we all feel like that's the indication that we're getting, right? The Jeremy Grant, Ayton, etc. There's going to be moving pieces. But man, you see this happen, and you're like, yeah, I don't think I would mind if those pieces happen sooner rather than later. Like, move those pieces so you get Donovan Clingan some more time. I talked about this with you guys multiple times. I've gotten arguments with media about Donovan Clingan only playing 13 minutes a night. Oh, he can't play more than 13 minutes, Burkhardt, because he's trying to get into his game shape. And do you really want him to go out there and fail and blah, blah, blah? Yes, I want him to go out there and make mistakes. I want him on the court 20, 30 minutes a night some nights, because that's how he's going to get better. And so he gets this night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The first night of that, first game of that back-to-back, he played 21 minutes. He had just 4 points. He did get into foul trouble, so those are mistakes we're talking about, right? But Robert Williams had a phenomenal game that game, and we'll dive into that in a second. But then the next night, Donovan Clingan comes out, and he plays 32 minutes almost, and has just an absolute banger of a performance. 17 points, 12 rebounds, 8 block shots. You heard that right, 8 block shots. And the thing is, he got into foul trouble early, picked up 2 quick fouls, played with those fouls, and only had 1 foul the rest of the way. So learning on the job, it's almost as if being put into situations that are going to force you to make mistakes, you learn from those and you get better. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? I do this at work with my, with the podcast, the radio, all my other social media stuff I do. You got to make mistakes to get better, man. So don't give me this whole Donovan Clingan only needs to play 13 minutes a night BS, right? Because that's stupid. And I think he's proved that now 2 games in a row. Now, let's talk about game 1, the NBA Cup game, right? Blazers go out. Nobody really gave them a chance against Minnesota, especially after just the absolute demoralizing loss the game prior against the Memphis Grizzlies, right? A 45-point loss, the 7th worst loss in team history, a team that looked flat. And then on that Monday, they had a practice, and it was talked about how they all came out and kind of aired their grievances a little bit. And they said what was on their mind, and they called out the elephant in the room, as Robert Williams said. And, you know, they got the coaches and the players on the same page. And sometimes you need to hit your lowest to bounce back up. And it felt like Memphis was the lowest, right? And so I talked about that media availability specifically, because if you go back on YouTube and listen to Robert Williams after that practice last Monday, you hear a leader, right? You hear a guy who understood the assignment. And that was, hey, I'm going to speak up and people are going to listen. And then he's going to go out and he's going to show that, hey, I'm not just talking. I'm going to play this way too. I'm going to play the way we need to play to not necessarily win ball games, because this team's going to lose ball games, right? But you need to play good basketball. Like I've said this before, guys. You can play great basketball and still lose a game. And the Blazers, that's what I want. I want this team to play great basketball. Talent-wise, there's going to be talent gaps, so they're going to lose games. But I want them to play good basketball the whole time. That game against Memphis was terrible basketball, and that's why it was so hard to swallow. So they readjust, they get their leaders in there, they get bugs in people's ears, and then in that game in the NBA Emirates Cup, the Trailblazers win 122-108. They absolutely control the game all the way through. And again, a lot of that was Robert Williams, who we said he was a leader on that Monday, and you could tell. 19 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 block shots, 3 steals. Like, I mean, he was on the cusp of a 5x5 in 25 minutes, right? 9 of 10 shooting. And I love the way he rolls. And I mean, like, when he runs a pick and roll, like he picks and then he rolls with purpose. Like, DeAndre Ayton does not roll with purpose, because DeAndre Ayton is as athletic as he is, doesn't tend to play a lot above the rim, right? He likes to pick, roll soft, hopefully get the ball for that 15-foot jumper, right? Robert Williams rolls and is instantly looking up, hoping someone will lob him the ball because he wants to play above the rim. And I love that. And I hope that starts to rub off on the other centers. And I think it did, because I felt like Donovan Clingan in the last 2 games was rolling a lot harder than he normally does. And so you get just this different little bit of play style with Robert Williams in there, a guy who draws the defenses into the rim just a little bit more, starts to open it up for everyone else, right? So in that game, Jeremy Grant had 21 points. Not a great shooting night, but he was opened up for a lot of shots. Toumani Camara had a great performance, 14 points. He's still, I'd say, has been the Blazers MVP to this point. He's been the best player. Defensively, he's unreal. Shaedon Sharpe starts to go off. He has 17 points. And then Denny Avdia has his best game as a Blazer, 17 points as well. And I think a lot of that was because of the juice that Robert Williams brought. So you leave that game thinking Robert Williams is the best center on the roster, right? Oh, man, we got to find ways to get him in there more. Okay, he can play the 4 a little bit, so that gives him chances to get on there. Maybe gets on with Clingan, maybe gets on with DA. We've seen those a few times already. But, man, he might be the best center. And then 24 hours later, he didn't even play in the game. Again, resting, which totally makes sense. You don't want to rush him out there too much as he's getting back from this injury after missing a year of basketball. But then Donovan Clingan stakes his claim to being the best center on the roster. And I do not say that lightly. Like, the experience that Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton have, absolutely. That means something, right? But Donovan Clingan does things that not a lot of centers in this league can do. I mean, defensively, he's a juggernaut, and he's only going to get better. He ended this game 6 of 10 shooting, 12 rebounds, 8 block shots, 17 points. And those 8 block shots, the second most all time by a Trailblazers rookie. That ties him with the legendary, one of my favorite Blazers of all time, just because his name was so cool to say, Kelvin Cato. It ties him with Sam Bowie. And we got to remember, Sam, yes, he had the injuries, but even post-injury, like his time in New Jersey, he was a good center. The injuries just beat him, right? And then, of course, number 1, Bill Walton had 9. I mean, anytime you're sitting there right next to Big Red, you're doing something pretty good. And we've talked about his per 36 numbers and how they bear out. He just doesn't play 36 minutes a night, obviously. But when you give him double his normal amount, shockingly, he gives you double the production. Again, 17 points, 12 rebounds, 8 block shots. Now, he's not going to have 8 block shots every single night, right? And we've talked about him not being an absolute point scorer. The 17 points is a pretty damn good night for him. But, man, you give me 12 rebounds, you give me 4 block shots a night, whatever it is, 12, 14 points. It's pretty darn good. So shout out to him. And he did it on Donovan Clingan glass night, too. Like his grandma was in attendance seeing her first game. It's just like a perfect night for Donovan Clingan to get the start and just go off. And he did. And that in that arena with every block shot, every make, that was by far the most electric Moda Center has been in the post-Dame era. And I don't think it's close. And so that's something I think you want to lean into. We want more of that. You want more of that as a fan. You want more of that as a reporter because it's just incredibly fun to talk about and go into the press conference and, ask Chauncey about, oh, man, what'd you see from Donovan? Oh, man, Donovan was great. And then talk to Donovan and see the big smile when he comes into the press room. Like, those are things you want to do, man. But more so than anything, the fans who pay their hard-earned money, that's the type of basketball you want to watch. And that was a great basketball from Donovan Clingan, man. The game from Donovan Clingan was so good that it overshadows the fact that Shaedon Sharpe also may have cemented himself as the best offensive weapon on this team. Think about that for a second. Anthony Simons didn't play in this one, dealing with an illness. He had that scary situation in that first game against Minnesota where he passed the ball off and then kind of grabbed his chest like he was short of breath. Didn't come back in that one and then didn't play in the second game due to illness. Still not going to play in tonight's game against Atlanta as I'm recording this. So then Shea goes out there and Shea needed to have a big game and he did. 36 minutes, 12 of 23 shooting, 33 points, a career high. Also one of the most insane putback jams you'll ever see on a Jeremy Grant missed turnaround jumper. He comes in flying, puts it back, which was probably one of the best dunks I've seen in Moda. And again, got everyone popping since my all-time favorite, the Thomas Robinson block out to the Will Barton lob, right? So he was all over social media as the highlights were rolling, deservedly so. But that's how good the last 2 games were from Robert Williams and Donovan Clingan, is that performance from Shaedon Sharpe, which everyone has wanted to see from him. They've wanted to see the offensive explosion. They've wanted to see him proving that he can be kind of the face of a franchise. And I've said this multiple times, so I don't think that this team drafted Scoot to be the guy. I think they drafted him to be Robin to a Batman, and they want Shaedon to be Batman. Well, Shaedon was flying like Batman around Gotham City in that one. 33 points. Absolutely incredible for a guy who's still shaking off the rust coming back from injury, right? And again, he does that. Has a personal best, new career high, and it's overshadowed by Donovan Clingan with his first double-double and almost a triple-double with block shots included. Not very often you see a triple-double, and the third category is block shots, right? So things are looking up after the all-time downer that was that loss against Memphis. And that loss against Memphis, I say this not jokingly, like Chauncey addressed the team in the locker room, which he doesn't normally do. So he took longer to get to the podium than he normally does. And I was sitting there they might be firing him right now. Maybe that's why this is taking so long for the coach to get to the podium, because this isn't normal. I mean, that's how bad the loss was. And social media was fired up. This is ridiculous, blah, 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 fire the coach, trade this guy. And no one was happy. And you shouldn't be happy when your team loses by 45 points. When half of the team's top 10 worst losses have come in the last 5 years, right? You get irritated. And so all we wanted to see was bounce back in that game against against Minnesota in the NBA Cup game. And I said it on the pregame show over and over and over and over again. Didn't care. Win or loss does not matter. Does not matter. All you need to see is a team that comes out focused. Because Coach Billups talked about it after the Memphis game, that the team just kind of walked in like they didn't even want to be there. First off, you get paid to play a kid's game. That just about anybody in the world would do anything to just be paid to play basketball, right? So show up and want to be there. Coach gives them the message. Players give them the message. And they come out in that game against Minnesota like they want to be there. And Donovan Clingan said it after those games. It's amazing what you can do when you're just playing for each other. And this is the mentality you have to have. And again, it showed. And so you didn't want him to necessarily win the game. I mean, you wanted him to win, but that wasn't the end-all be-all that night. It was, can this team show that the rock-bottom feeling of that Memphis loss can galvanize this team and put them back on course? And that loss, as bad as it was, sometimes they need to happen. And I think that one needed to happen because the team you saw in those next two games was completely different. Completely different. Now, granted, Minnesota's kind of going through it too, as they're struggling a little bit, more so than anybody thought. And I think they'll eventually get there. They're working in Julius Randle and figuring out how they're playing and whatnot. But again, the Blazers bounced back, and that's exactly what they needed to do. They needed to bounce back and just play good basketball. If they won, great. But if they lost by, 5 points, 10 points, but at least they did not roll over like they did in Memphis, I think a lot of people would have been happy. All right, there we go. We got a good game. Didn't take the dub. That's okay. They played competent basketball. They looked like a basketball team again. Well, not only in the last two games did they look like a competent basketball team, they look like the best basketball team on the floor those two games. Good on them. I don't know who gets all the credit. Do you give the credit all to Chauncey? Do you give the credit to Robert Williams and the leaders in the locker room? Do you give the credit to Memphis for just giving them the juice to turn around and say, yeah, that taste sucked. I wanted to get that out of the mouth. Like this lemon taste, this bitterness. Nope. We need to move on. Thanks, Memphis. I don't know, but the Blazers deserve a ton of credit for what they were able to do following that game, because that Memphis game could have definitely spiraled out of control. They could have lost those last two games, had a break, and then they get Atlanta in the last game of this homestand, and it's just like things are not looking good. Things are not looking good. And you need a couple of wins, because the schedule from here on out doesn't get any easier, right? The Blazers have one last home game as of this recording against the Atlanta Hawks, and then they hit the road. They have the Oklahoma City Thunder, the first of two games back-to-back against the Houston Rockets, against that same Memphis team that just demoralized them. And keep in mind, that game against Memphis, they lost by 45. No Desmond Bane, no Marcus Smart, no Ja Morant. That made that loss even worse. Then they end that road trip with the Indiana Pacers. They come back for a two-game homestand against the Sacramento Kings to end November, and then they start December 1st against the Dallas Mavericks, and then they get back on the road for a one-off against the Clippers. A one-off back at home, a couple little, away home, kind of nonsensy. But this little road trip right here, it's going to be a good test too. Obviously, Oklahoma City now without Chet Holmgren, but Oklahoma City took care of the Blazers just a few weeks ago. Houston is a team that's continues to find ways to play better, right? I mean, they got Ime, they got a young roster. They're finding their ways. They're still Houston, right? But they're the third best team in the West right now at 9-4. And again, a lot of that's coaching and the young players just putting it together. Now, I say they're still Houston because, I mean, one game is the difference between being in third and being in seventh right now. But hey, they're taking care of business early. And when you hit the road and you do things you need to do, I don't care if you win or lose, Blazers. All I care is that you play competent basketball like we saw against Minnesota, because that feeling was great. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the 1977 podcast. That's right. We keep them short and sweet. Something for you to chew on your trip down I-84 on your way to Moda, right? 19 minutes and 77 seconds long in honor of your 1977 world champion. That's right. I didn't say NBA champion. World champion, Portland Trail Blazers. Again, we'll get here every time we can. And of course, in the meantime, you can follow me on X at Chris J. Burkhardt. Send me all your questions, comments, and concerns. And before and after every Blazers game, 2 hours before tip-off on Rip City Radio 620, you can catch me on Blazers Game Day and on the YouTube channel for Rip City Radio, so where you can continue the conversation. And after the game, the fifth quarter as well, where we can just continue to talk Blazers all night long. As always, I appreciate your Rip City. We'll talk to you on the next one.
You've been listening to the 1977 podcast. See you next time.